Welcome to the Art of Healing podcast, the podcast that is dedicated to helping you connect with your mind, body, and spirit. This is Charlize, physician and Reiki Master, and thank you so much for joining me. I would like to remind you that although I'm a physician, the information you receive in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. You can find my full disclaimer at my website, www.healingartshealthandwellness.com. If you like what you hear on this podcast, sign up for my weekly newsletter. Check your show notes for more information and for the link to sign up. Thank you. Hello, Art of Healing podcast listeners. Thank you so much for joining me for the month of December, which will be one of our last episodes for this year. It's been an awesome season of recording, and I feel like I get to finish on just a really great note. I'm joined today with my guest, Holly Copeland, who is a certified human potential coach and Biofield Tuning Practitioner, NeuroMeditation, and subtle energy meditation teacher. And she's also a Reiki Master. She teaches non-dual awareness and subtle energy meditation techniques, and she also uses neurotechnology, Reiki, and tuning forks in transformative quantum healing experiences and in her coaching work. She is the founder of HeartMind Alchemy, and she is a former scientist turned meditation teacher and coach. Holly unites ancient wisdom with modern science and harnesses modern technology and neuroscience to empower her clients on the path to human flourishing and upgrading from an ordinary mind to luminous awareness. She guides people out of the muddy waters of thinking mind to living in a flow and joyfully and effortlessly from their own inner compass. Thank you so much, Holly, for joining me today. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm just delighted to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me. So, listeners, as I'm learning about Holly, I think it's really interesting. She's got this science background. It just occurred to me, Holly, you probably already know this, but your background reminds me a lot of Barbara Brennan. I don't know if you saw that parallel before, or I don't know if you've read any of her books, Hands of Light.
I have Hands of Light, yes, and that's a very flattering comparison. She's incredible, so thank you so much.
It just occurred to me you have a very similar background. So I have a few questions I had for Holly, and I wanted to ask her to share some of our wisdom. So my first is, with my community, I love to share ways to make meditation more accessible. I'm always looking for any tools to do this. I don't want people to feel like in order to become a student of meditation, they have to drop their lives, leave everything they know, become completely ascetic. I noticed that Holly likes to harness technology and biofeedback devices. So I'd like to ask her, how can technology and biofeedback devices help rewire our brains for calm and happiness and to support our healing process?
It is such a great question and a wonderful launching off place. So thank you for that question. I will start by answering from my personal journey on how they helped me. And because I think it's always easiest to hear from somebody's first person experience to kind of understand how it might help you, the listener. So in my journey, I was a scientist working for the Nature Conservancy, and I had done that for 25 years. And I came to a place where, without going into too much of the detail, but just to say, I knew and was aware that I had this very busy mind. The narrator in my head was very strong and wouldn't stop necessarily. And I was sort of tired of myself, if you can say it that way. Like, who is this voice in your head and why won't she just shut up, And she felt bossy. and she felt confused, and she felt, reactive to things that were happening. And so I really wanted to get out of my own head, if that makes sense. I wanted to learn to live more embodied, of course, happier, freer. I wasn't super happy, even though I felt like I'd checked all the boxes in life. Like, I had children that were doing well in school. I had a good job. I had a loving husband, and I had a beautiful home. So I checked all the boxes. And yet when I took inventory of my situation, it's like, why am I not happier? And what I felt like is, it's me, it's in me. It's not out there. I can't, I've done all the things I could possibly do. And I'm so lucky to be able to say all those things, because a lot of people have, one or more major issues with things in their life. And I'm saying this because that turnaround inwards into looking at how our own experience of reality is actually contributing, is actually what governs our happiness and our well-being. It feels like if I just change that thing out there, then I'll be better in here. And that illusion is actually what I really love working with people on, because it's in that place, you end up always chasing something out there in life to make better so that you can feel good in here. And the meditation journey for me really is the journey to learn to feel good in here, regardless of what's going on out there. So the outside world is going to continue with all of its trials and tribulations and difficulties and challenges. And meditation invites us to change our experience of our inner landscape. So I want to start there. I know that's a really a big place to start, but it's important for me to set the stage of what meditation is and why it's so important. So we want to change our inner experience. And that's where I came to in my own journey, was knowing that I wanted to change my inner experience. And I had tried meditation. So I had, during different parts of my life, I'd been reading lots of self-help books and books like Eckhart Tolle, and they'd helped me immensely. But the truth is, when I sat down to meditate, it felt difficult. It felt like I didn't have time for it. I was a busy scientist, and I could never make it stick. Okay. And the first technology that I ran across, a couple things happened because I'm a scientist, and so let me just say that I did a lot of reading and studying about brainwaves, because I wanted to understand what is happening in my own brain and mind. Why is it so busy, and how do I get it to quiet down? And I learned about brainwaves. I learned about this incredible doctor, Dr. Fermi, who wrote a book called The Open Focus Brain. And I started to learn that busy mind those are beta brainwaves in our head that are keeping the mind active and busy. And then I learned through NeuroMeditation Institute about different areas of the brain that are overactive, like the prefrontal cortex and the anterior cingulate cortex along the top of the brain. And when those are overactive and overheated, we experience a very stressed, busy brain. We don't have a lot of calm, quiet, slower alpha and theta brainwaves that are what facilitate a calm state of mind. Okay. So that was a first aha for me as a scientist, was just seeing like dissecting the brain a little bit to understand what's happening when my brain feels so busy, and how can I change it? And so here's where, now I'm going to get back to answering your question directly, which is, here's where neurofeedback and technology tools come in. And the first tool that I ran across that was so life-changing for me was called the Muse. And the Muse is a meditation headband. and you put it on, and it allows you to listen to your own brain waves in real time. And so if you put it on and you start meditating and your brain is very busy in those beta brain waves, you hear a lot of rain. So it's like literally you're hearing feedback in your ears that are telling you your brain is busy. And then as you quiet your mind through focusing on your breath, for example, and that's not the only technique, but that's a kind of a tried and true technique, and you actually are successful at that, then the rain that you hear, the feedback in your ears will quiet. And so for me, that simple technology was so profound because it was like, oh, I can hear what a quiet mind sounds like, and I'm getting feedback. And so it's not such a black box. Like for me, meditation felt like a black box because I didn't have a reference point to even know what a quiet mind would be. Like, how am I supposed to know? And this technology gave me the actual sound in my head so that I could, like training wheels, that like, here's how you learn to ride the bike, this is, you focus on their breath and you hear your brain quieting through the quieting of the sound in my ears. And now I have some reference point that I can work from. And that for me was absolutely like one of the first of many life-changing ways that technology helped me.
So, previously you started a meditation practice and you said it didn't stick. So when it wouldn't stick, would it be the sort of thing where you might meditate for a day and then come back several weeks later, or not come back for a long time? Or do you recall what those days were like?
Sure, I do. I would sit down and say, okay, I'm going to stare at this candle, focusing on the candle for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And I think what happens is that when you start to quiet your mind, often actually more thoughts will come up because there's so much waiting to come up from the energy in the body. And so even more thoughts would come up. And I had this sense of like, is this doing anything? Am I doing it right? What am I supposed to be doing? And that uncertainty for me made it difficult to stick with it.
So you found that using this device, the Muse, was helpful. Is that something that you recommend with your clients that might be struggling, or is that something you're incorporating in your practice now?
Yes, and yes. So I do recommend it for clients who want to start meditation and whom listening to me describe this sounds like something that would work for them. It's not for everyone. There are some people where, putting on a headband and hooking it to your phone and adjusting it is just too much, So it's not for everyone, but for many people, and especially younger people who are used to technology and aren't afraid of, hooking their phones up and all of that, then it's been very, very helpful for them.
I'm curious myself now. It has never occurred to me to actually incorporate any technology, and I am becoming increasingly curious as you describe this. Because I didn't, yeah.
It's an amazing piece of technology. It really is. Like, I got to hand it to this company for coming up with something that really, for me now, it's a little bit like training wheels. So like you asked if I still use it. Occasionally I do, but I used it for like years, it was a little bit like training wheels. You put the training wheels on, you learn to ride the bike, and then eventually you can drop the training wheels and just ride the bike. So to me, it's a little bit like that.
Nice.
You don't necessarily need it forever, but by God, if you don't know how to ride a bike, training wheels are pretty cool. They save a lot of falling over or deciding that, riding a bike isn't for you because you're just too humiliated. So, the other thing that I learned to do with Muse, and this is a little bit more, this is going to wade into the waters of a little geeky, but some people might appreciate this. So there's an out-of-the-box app that the Muse has that does what I just described with the rain. But there are other apps that are third-party apps that connect to the Muse and create graphs that you can graph your meditation and look at it afterwards and see what your brainwaves did during the meditation. And in my profession as a scientist, I was a data analyst. And so I found this like extraordinarily fascinating. So I wrote an article, a blog article on this. If people are interested in more detail, we can share the link to that.
Yes.
And I described how I recorded a meditation each day. And then also because I'm a data analyst, I wrote a program in this software called R and created a trend graph so that I could see how my brainwaves changed over time using the Muse. And what I found was that not only did it feel like through meditation, my brain was getting quieter and I was having more theta and alpha waves and fewer beta brainwaves, but I actually have the data to prove that. I did that. My brain literally quieted through meditation, and I have over a year of data to show how I did that. So, yeah, it's pretty.
Maybe we're geeking out. Now I'm very interested. Because honestly, I didn't even know that was possible. I'm thinking, is this like an EEG that we use in medicine?
It is an EEG.
Did not
Yeah,
know this.
it's a home EEG.
Okay. Well, listeners, we all learned something new because I actually did not know this was possible to do at home. And I will share with the listeners where to find your article so that we can read it. So yeah, I'll share that in the show notes.
Super. And I also have on my website, you can get a link to the Muse, and people can get a discount going through my link. So I will also share
Holly,
that.
thank you so much. So listeners, I'll make sure to share Holly's link to make sure you get that discount. If she's speaking your language and you know that meditation is for you, but you were needing that little oomph, this is maybe what you're needing. I love this. So we'll make sure to share your link, Holly. You had said, Holly, that this mind chatter, inner critic, you described her pretty well. With my own patients, I'm often hearing something similar, and we often talk about their mind, their thoughts, and how this links to their health. Because they seem like two different things. Definitely in the world of traditional medicine, there's an attempt to make the mind different from the body. But often we're discussing like how some of their thinking is leading to some of their poor health. So I advise my patients that trying meditation can create a happy internal environment. And that's just what you were describing. So can you share in a little bit more detail, just however you're comfortable, how is it that meditation can create that inner happiness? And if it's so easy and you're a scientist, why isn't everyone doing this?
Okay, great question. So how meditation can create inner happiness? And if it's so easy, why isn't everyone doing it? Wow. Okay. So first, right, we have this, you know this from being a physician, this complex system. Actually, it's an embodied whole system. So we're not just in our minds. You and I have been talking about our minds, but actually it's the whole body. And I think more and more from the work of Dr. Porges, we understand how the nervous system is actually, regulating our body and our well-being. And so really what we want to do is, balance the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system so that the body is in coherence, so that we can flourish, so that we can have overall health and well-being. And the brain, in a sense, is kind of the last piece of that, of, listening to how the body is and then responding. So I want to address your question also by tying that in, because I don't want to just keep it in the head. I think there's a risk in just thinking if we just meditate that, we'll sort of solve all the problems, but really there's this heart-brain connection that's so important. So I want to bring that in. So the heart math people have been some of the people that have really been making these connections for people and, saying like there's 60 times more signals that go from the heart to the brain than the brain to the heart, right? So actually, really, we want to start by bringing ourselves into coherence in the body first, and as one piece of the puzzle that's so important. So I just want to say first, like I'm also a breathwork practitioner and I'm a heart math practitioner, and really encourage people into breathing and some of the, learning to work with the breath and slowing down the breathing to also bring the body into flourishing. And heart math has some great tools for that. And they, like we've been talking about the Muse, the EEG, but then there's also, the heart coherence tools that heart math has. Do you have that one?
No, because again, and it's really funny as you're discussing this, and I work kind of in the hard sciences. I will dilly-dally with thinking about getting it, and then I never do. So I was thinking about getting one of the heart math devices. And then I just kind of, I don't know. I just thought, I think that's intimidating. And I'm a physician.
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's too much. I mean, but the way you're describing it, this sounds much easier than than what I was thinking.
It's super easy. Their little ear clip, you put it on, they have an app, and it encourages you to breathe. And you breathe in and out of the heart, like 5 or 6 seconds in, it guides you, like the app guides you. And it, like the Muse, when you're in coherence, when you're in a coherent rhythm, then you get a green, the app goes green. And then as you fall out of coherence, it goes into orange and red. So it teaches you how to use slow, coherent breathing coupled with happy emotions or positive emotions. Because when we bring in, let's say, thinking about love for a pet or a child or something, that actually brings coherence into our system. So you, just like the Muse, you can actually see it and hear it. You get a little chime and you get a green. So you start to learn how to regulate your body's system through this beautiful, biofeedback device that's not super expensive. And for me, again, like, what does wholeness and wellness feel like when in the breath? And that's not necessarily very obvious, but you can train yourself by working with this tool like 10 minutes each day to start to bring the body back into coherence. And, that's why breath work too is so many meditation practices use breath work because of that. Okay. So then after all that, just setting the stage for meditation, I think one of the things that it's helpful is to know why you're meditating. I think, a little bit of reverse questioning. Why do so many people not do it? Well, one is they're not clear on their why. They're a little foggy on it and what it's really going to do for them. So one thing is you want to be so clear with your intention about why you want to do it. And then you need to be confident and clear that the method you're using is going to get you to the goal. And I think sometimes that feels murky. Like we don't really know if those things match up. I think the NeuroMeditation Institute has done a really great job of that. They have a meditation style survey you can take, and you can learn, like, should I be working on a focused meditation, or is more of like a loving kindness meditation or a mindfulness meditation good for me? So, and we can put the link for that. So getting clear on your why and knowing what you're doing it for. And then getting support for that technique. So there are so many. So how do we get support for that? Well, there's so many good apps now out there and teachers that are there, but it can be confusing to know, like, which one do I do? And is this the right one? The Insight Timer app is one that I really, really love, and it's free. There are meditations on there, so that go directly from the survey that I said to, do a breath focused neuromeditation, and they have guided meditations on that. I'm a teacher on Insight Timer, so you can go to my meditations as well. Neuromeditations, and I have all the different styles. I have one for each of those on my channel. And I also want to say that just this simple sense of knowing, like, and having confidence that the brain can change. Like, if you are stuck in a monkey mind, if you're stuck in a stress state, to know that, the beauty of neuroplasticity and the neuroplastic brain now, right, is that we know that we can change this. We're not like, I hear people say, like, well, I just have a busy mind, as though that's an unchangeable state, but it's not. Just because you've had it, even if you've had it most of your life, doesn't mean that that's the only state to live in. And so I just want to stress that, to know that the brain can change. Like, we know that that's probably just because the way I describe it, the metaphor I use is like you've been traveling down one highway. And so those neural pathways in the brain, those are the ones that are solidified. And so if you want to jump the track and go onto a dirt road, it's going to take a little work, right? To jump into that dirt road. And for that dirt road to become established and become the new norm in your brain, you have to keep traveling it. So you have to retrain and rewire your brain into this other way of being, to being more, like, to use Les Fermi's terminology, to be more open, for example, and not so rigidly focused and hyper-focused. And meditation can train you to be more open and have an open awareness, but you need to train in that every single day and understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And as long as you have confidence in what you're doing and you know why you're doing it, it's actually remarkable. Like, the science and the papers that have been done say within 8 weeks, you can change your brain. That's the work of Sarah Lazar at Harvard, who did a mindfulness study with participants. And within 8 weeks, they had started to see, like, real changes in the brain and brain structure, positive changes from meditation. So it doesn't take long, but you just need to know that you're making those positive changes and the right changes for you.
Nice. So I actually really like that metaphor of you're traveling a new road. So maybe the road you've been on is paved, and it might even be a highway. So where is it taking you? No. Where is that road taking you?
Exactly. Completely. And if you're one of those people who jumps around all the time from app to app and, Instagram feed posts, you're wiring in kind of a hyper arousal state, right?
Mm.
So that's the one that's wired in the brain. So that's what your brain is going to be like. But if you practice opening up your awareness, and I would even invite, like, if I may, just with the listeners right now, so Les Fermi, one of the ways that he discovered to help people get into alpha is, so first to just notice the ordinary way of being, which kind of feels like there's this sharp focus behind the eyes, right? That kind of sense of me that sits behind the eyes. And what happens if you just imagine the space between your ears? And then what happens if you imagine the space between your shoulders? And then I invite you to bring that out to feeling the space in the room. And then feel that you're aware from the space in the room. And as you feel with this awareness from the space in the room, just gently notice what's happened to that constellation of thinking awareness behind the eyes, that sense of me. Just see if it feels like maybe you have more space in your own being. And then we'll do one more. Drop that awareness so that you feel you're aware from your heart space. So center that sense of awareness down in your heart. So like you're feeling your heart from within your heart. And then I invite you, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes in a minute, but before you do, when you do, I want you to imagine that you're looking out the world from the eyes of your heart. So open your eyes gently, but keep your awareness centered in your heart space. And just notice how that might be different from how you were looking out before. What do you notice?
That was such a gift. I could immediately feel my own heart rate slow down. Whenever from my perspective, it's time to have on a guest and I want to make sure everything works. I had shared with Holly listeners that I was having some technical difficulties. Um, and so I was still carrying that. And as soon as you brought us into our heart space, I felt it like, oh, it's okay.
Right? Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. So that just shows that's that, as you described in the biography, in the bio you read of me earlier, that this ordinary mind that we take for granted to be kind of the way we are, is that we can actually immediately shift out of that into a new way of being, like I just did with you, that we're not actually stuck, as it were, from this one view, which feels like this solidified view of me that most of us have, but that we can actually experience the world from a different perspective, like just shifting awareness out to being aware of the space in the room. Actually, on a neuroscience, from the geeky neuroscience, we're shifting our brain waves in that moment. We're slowing them down. We're bringing in alpha. We're allowing this, but our experience of the world is more calm, right? Feels like there's more space here. Actually gives us more space to deal with whatever's arising. So if something were to immediately happen, right? A child were to come into the room and need your help, like you can actually have more space to deal with that issue because you're not so razor focused. One of the metaphors I use here is like, it's as though when we're razor focused, we're in that beta brainwave state. It's like we're hunting for the tiger might get us in the jungle. Like we're kind of stuck in that, like a hyper alert, oh my God, where's the tiger kind of mode of being. And this is like dropping into like the ancient warrior who's kind of walking mindfully through the jungle, like just very aware of everything that's happening with much more space to respond to whatever's happening,
Nice.
Yeah.
Holly, thank you so much
It's a,
for me, from the listeners. That was a beautiful moment. And I totally didn't anticipate that was coming. You just brought us a little bit of healing and you just kind of just did it. That is so nice. Thank you.
Sure.
So, Holly, do you mind sharing with the listeners where to find you, how to stay connected, how, if they're wanting to go further with everything that you've advised and offered, how can the listeners find you?
Yeah, thank you. So my website is heartmindalchemy.com, and you will find links there to a number of things I mentioned here. You'll find in the resources, you'll find links where you can find some of the technology I mentioned and discounts to that. You will find links to my insight timer meditations there, my blog articles there, and then ways to work with me. So I work one-on-one with people. So if you're interested in one-on-one coaching using the Muse and getting meditation support, and I also do sound healing work, and I'm a breathwork practitioner. And so I actually created a program called Awaken, Heal, Breathe. That's like my signature program that I work with people on and bring all of these tools. I combine them all into one package to really help people elevate their whole lives and flourish. It's like kind of thing that I really, really am passionate about and love working with people on. And I'm also starting to do some online workshops and courses. And so there's links to some of those as well there on my website. And you can also just book a 30-minute discovery call for free with me, and I can talk to you about what the options are. So.
Oh, that is fantastic. So, Art of Healing listeners, I hope that as we close out this episode, as Holly mentioned, that you're expanded, more aware. I have a feeling that we are all making a lot more alpha waves right now, thanks to Holly. So, on behalf of my listeners, Holly, I want to personally thank you for being a guest. I want to personally thank you for taking us into that mini meditation awareness. Thank you. Thank you so much for being a guest, and that maybe I could have you back sometime in the future.
Oh, thank you so much. I'd love to come back. I absolutely would love that, and just appreciate you so much and your audience. So thank you all for having me here.
Listeners, if you check your show notes, all of the important information, how to reach Holly, how to book a call with her, it'll be there in the show notes. Also, listeners, it's a little bit easier if you want to sign up for my weekly newsletter. You'll get an easy link to download this episode. You might want to keep this, listen to it later, and do that beautiful practice we did later, as well as for Holly's information. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us. And until next week, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Art of Healing podcast. Once again, this is Charlize. You can find out more about me at www.healingartshealthandwellness.com. Did you know I have a blog as well as online courses? Check your show notes to sign up for more information about healing arts, health, and wellness. Thank you. Please feel free to share this episode with your friends, family, and loved ones.